Crimson beams of energy ripped through the spore-choked air, boiling through towering pitcher plants and searing holes into the dirt. In the underbrush below, a platoon of clone troopers, their armor so caked in muck that its original color could only be guessed at, fired back in the vague direction of the advancing spider droids. The platoon didn't have time for this skirmish. If it couldn't break through and take Hargau soon, the water would be poisoned and Felucia would die. Hello and welcome back. Today, we're going to be looking back at another of the bloodiest battles in the history of the Star Wars galaxy, looking for insights into the soldiers who fought and died in them, with the goal of understanding the worst day of these beings' lives, and, in many cases, the last day of these beings' lives. In this video, we're going to be looking at the experiences of the 327th Star Corps in another infamous battle of the Clone Wars, one of the most important conflicts of the Outer Rim sieges, the Battle of Felucia. Felucia was one of the CIS's most important strongholds, the headquarters of the Commerce Guild and a major staging ground for the droid army. This fortress world guarded the spinward flank of the Foundry of the Confederacy, the stretch of industrial worlds that made up the core of Separatist territory, and throughout the Clone Wars, it had protected the Separatist core systems from Republic assault after Republic assault. During the Outer Rim sieges, it was a key target for Republic forces, labeled by Chancellor Palpatine as one of 3 Separatist strongholds that made up a triad of evil, together with Magito and Seleucami, becoming the Republic's 3 highest priority targets. An enormous part of the GAR was committed to taking Felucia, but the campaign would not be an easy one. The first wave of Republic forces got through the Commerce Guild's blockade above the planet easily enough, but the clone army had a much harder time on the ground. The first GAR unit that landed on Felucia, the 182nd Legion, met with setback after setback, routinely defeated not by the planet's resident droid armies but by the environment. Their vehicles were mired in the difficult terrain, and they got lost several times in the dense fungal jungles. Equipment quickly got gunked up by muck and fungal spores, planet's wildlife gave the Legion constant trouble, and flesh-eating diseases tore through the ranks, killing many clones in horrifying ways. Then, contact with the 182nd was lost altogether. The 501st Legion, one of the Republic's most elite divisions, was sent in after them. The 501st soon discovered that the 182nd had been overrun by starved acklays the Commerce Guild had imported to Felucia and then released into the wild, and it suffered many casualties of its own to the beasts before it finally wiped them all out. In the end, the 501st was able to establish a Republic foothold on the planet, but this came at tremendous cost. After establishing a staging ground, the 501st departed for other theaters, and the 327th Star Corps, led by General Ayla Secura and Commander Bly, was brought in to finish the job. With the arrival of the 327th, the battle began in earnest. Republic forces took the Nigco detention facility and the city of Kuei Tiao, the latter of which housed the personal stronghold of Separatist Council member Shu Mei, the Commerce Guild Presidente. Sakura and her men found the stronghold empty. Shu Mei had fled the planet days before. They also discovered that she had activated a contingency measure when she left, which threatened to poison Felucia's water table if Republic forces weren't able to stop it in time. This strong-armed Republic forces into splitting up, scattering to stop Mei's contingency plan, while other clone detachments engaged Commerce Guild droid armies in the heart of Felucia's jungles. Felucia was almost overpoweringly colorful. From the yellow-tinged, spore-filled mists that hung in the air, to the riotous, multicolored giant fungi that made up its jungles, to the bolts of red and blue that danced in the air between them and in the space between the loyalist and separatist positions. From across a small field of translucent, reddish-brown mushrooms and sickly green sprouts, a trio of Commerce Guild homing spider droids stalked forward on spindly legs, bolts of blue plasma striking their armor like raindrops, with only scorch marks to show for their passing. The droids fired back, sending long beams of red energy into the fog in the general direction of the enemy, searching for the clones and their walker. The beam from one droid lanced through the air and sliced one of the jungle's towering pitcher plants in half, boiling away its insides. The severed upper half of the translucent blue fungus caught fire and toppled, sending a handful of clones scattering out of its path. The troopers, which made up one of 4 squads in the advancing platoon, dived into the muck as the spider droids accompanying infantry spotted them and opened fire, sending a salvo of blaster bolts over the clones' heads. The troopers raised their rifles and returned fire. As the clones lay in the muck, an insect, long-bodied and many-legged, crawled unnoticed up the sergeant's leg, creeping through the layers of muck that coated his yellow and white armor. It wasn't until the creature slipped under his cuirass that the sergeant noticed it, jolting up as he felt the insect crawling up his back. He dropped his rifle and flailed for the insect in vain, trying to reach under his armor to remove it. In doing so, he crushed the bug between his armor and body glove, and the creature, startled, bit back. The sergeant screamed as the insect's venom, quickly fatal to creatures much larger than a human, entered his bloodstream. As the sergeant began to spasm, the other troopers, with a regretful look or two back at their fallen comrade, switched off their helmet comms to make the screaming stop. But they had scarcely a second of relief, as no sooner had they turned off their comlinks than a new shriek split the jungle. The troopers' blood ran cold, and they turned, heedless of the droids advancing across the clearing, as a new arrival scuttled through the jungle toward them. Through the translucent fungal foliage, they caught distorted glimpses of it as it approached, its green-brown hide stretched over 6 spindly legs, its claws deadly sharp, upraised for the kill, a grinning maw of needle-like teeth. With another screech, the Acklay charged through the towering fungi, bearing down on the platoon, starved and desperate for meat. The troopers raised their blasters and opened fire, but the bolts barely scorched the Acklay's thick hide. The beast snarled in pain and continued its charge, pouncing on the first trooper and skewering him with one of its sharp front legs. The Acklay bent down, eagerly shoveling the trooper into its mouth, swallowing him whole, armor and all. The other clones took the opportunity to concentrate their fire, aiming for the monster's eyes, its neck, any spot that might be vulnerable. Even as they did so, a hail of shells descended on their position, and the ground erupted in showers of dirt and flame. An armored assault tank had arrived to support the advancing spider droids, and, in their distraction, the troopers had left themselves vulnerable to bombardment. One of the shells struck the Acklay square in the back, ripping the beast apart and showering the battlefield in gore. But the clones could take no comfort from its demise, for, by that point, most of them had already suffered the same fate, and the remainder were soon to follow. While other detachments of the 327th struggled to take Felucia's scattered cities, the Jedi and the unit's elite troops split off to prevent the poisoning of the planet. To do this, they had to capture and disable sabotaged water treatment plants in 3 cities: Hargao, Niango, and Geetsly. Aayla Secura and Commander Bly led a force to take Niango, while Barriss Offee and a column of heavy walkers broke for Hargao, and the 2 Jedi's Padawans were assigned to take Geetsly. As the Commerce Guild's defenses on Felucia were strongest against an air assault, all 3 teams proceeded on foot or aboard walkers with minimal air support, trekking through the jungle and battling columns of battle droids as they went. The Padawans reached their target first, capturing Geetsly and its water treatment plant, where they were able to prevent the plant's automated systems from leaking toxins into the planet's water table. It was shortly thereafter that Order 66 was issued. En route to Niango and Hagao, Aayla Secura and Barriss Offee were murdered by their own troops, while their Padawans narrowly avoided assassination in Geetsly and fled into the jungles. Once the Jedi were dealt with, Commander Bly and Lieutenant Gale took over Secura and Offee's offensives, and under their command, the 327th pressed on, captured Hagao and Niango, and foiled Shumei's scheme to poison the planet. Shortly thereafter, all droid army units on the planet were remotely shut down from the Separatist secret bunker on Mustafar, and the Grand Army of the Republic, now the Stormtrooper Corps of the Galactic Empire, took control of Felucia. As they did, on the other side of the galaxy, Shumei, the target of the whole Felucia offensive, was murdered by Darth Vader on Mustafar. In the end, the Battle of Felucia was a victory not for the Confederacy or the Republic, but for the Empire. The 327th Star Corps, which had arrived on the planet as the loyal soldiers of the Jedi, left as their executioners, as the shock troops of the newly formed Empire. The unit was also left much reduced in size. The fighting on Felucia, as well as the horrors of its environment, had taken its toll. That does it for this video, but what do you think of this series so far? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.